Hi, I'm Norm Stockton. Welcome to Grooving.For.Heaven.Vol.2, or welcome back as the case may be if you're continuing on from the first video. As in that first video, we'll be looking at some things today that can be classified as general musical concepts and ideas that are geared towards developing your playing as well as your listening skills, and are applicable pretty much to any sort of musical situation in which you might be involved. Additionally, we'll be looking at some factors that are more specifically geared towards some of the unique things we deal with as players in the worship environment. Today we'll be picking up from where Volume 1 left off and covering a number of different topics, including Part 2 of fingerboard familiarity, with a look at the modes, interval memorization, and just getting your instrument so you're that much more at home on it. We'll be taking a look at the spice of your playing. It's a term that I use to refer to some technical things that you do to maybe be even more communicative and expressive on your bass. We'll also be checking out idioms of bass styles, and by that I'm referring to taking a look at the factors that make a Latin bass line, or a country bass line, what some of the specific things are that'll make it that way, so that you can perhaps incorporate those things into your own bass lines and come up with some fresh and different ideas. We're then going to take a stab at the huge and fairly subjective topic of taste, with an emphasis on playing a fill or a variation. Additionally, we'll be exploring the slap style, the slap technique, and I'll be giving you some exercises and some examples to help you develop that technique, or maybe refine your technique so that you can start using that and incorporating that in your own little palette of techniques for different grooves. We'll also be taking a look at the fretless bass, speaking of things for your palate, and how this beautiful instrument with its unique timbre can be applied to the worship setting. Lastly, and perhaps most importantly, we'll be taking a look at some issues of the heart and some ministry considerations. This video does assume that solid foundation that we talked about in Volume 1 has been established totally. If you're at all unsure of that, I definitely encourage you to go back and kind of take a look and assimilate some of those things that we covered before. I find that food and music have all sorts of parallels, and I kind of relate it to trying to make a pizza by throwing a bunch of ingredients into a pan, pepperoni, mushrooms, whatever, cheese, and cooking it up, and as it's cooking it sure smells good, but when it comes out, suddenly it's painfully apparent that somebody forgot the crust. The crust is what makes it happen. It's what makes it pizza, really. Well, the musical analogy is obvious. We need to establish that foundation so there's somewhere for all the sort of the extra stuff, the tasty stuff, to be on top of and make one solid thing. Cool? As in that first video, by the way, today we'll be spending more time focusing on the technical and musical end of things than on the spiritual. It's just the very nature of a bass instructional video. But I definitely encourage you to spend time in the Word, and there's a ton of great resources out there that teach on worship. So this isn't a one or the other thing, obviously. It's absolutely a pleasure to be able to spend this time with you. Let's go ahead and kick it in. Today we're going to start by spending about 10 minutes or so talking about the modes. Now, why modes, you may ask? Well, having a good understanding of the modes will allow you to immediately evaluate a chord chart for a song and know when you see a certain chord what type of scale you should play with that chord. For instance, if the song is in G, G major, you think, okay, well, you could play any note in the G major scale and that would work. Now, if in that same song there was a C major chord, you may think, oh, okay, well, I'll just play any note in the C major scale, but that wouldn't work. That selection of notes would differ depending on the function of that major chord or minor chord or whatever within the key of the song, and that gets into the whole idea of modes. So what we'll do first is kind of evaluate the modes themselves, determine what are the modes and what are the intervals within those modes, and then we'll look at how to apply those to music. All right? There are 7 modes that we'll be discussing today, and they're the diatonic modes, or they're also known as the church modes. How appropriate. Basically, these are the Ionian mode, that's your first mode. The second mode is the Dorian mode. Third mode is the Phrygian mode. Fourth mode is the Lydian mode. Fifth mode is the Mixolydian mode, which we covered a little bit in Volume 1. Sixth mode is the Pi-Ala mode. No, you know that was coming. The sixth mode is the Aeolian mode. Seventh mode is the Locrian mode. So at this point, we'll just kind of stop and we'll test on those terms. Actually, what are the notes that make up those modes? What are the intervals? Well, when I said based on the major scale, I was referring to this. We know the C major scale from when we covered them in Volume 1, right? C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? Those are the intervals, and we generally talk in terms of intervals. This is your first mode. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's your first mode. It's the notes of the C major scale played from the 1 up an octave to the 8, right? Now, you know that the C major scale doesn't cease to exist outside of this range. I mean, it keeps going infinitely down below your hearing and up above your hearing. So, if you played those same notes, that same selection of notes, but from the second interval, or the D, up an octave to the high D, or that would actually be the 9, right? What would that sound like? D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. Or if you played that as a scale in its own right, with this being the root of that scale, it would be 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7 octave. You hear that? I fingered it in a different way, but if you listen, it's the same scale. That same selection of notes played from the second interval to the second interval an octave above would be your second mode. That would be your Dorian mode. Do you see how those are put together? The other modes use the same methodology. The third mode, or the Phrygian mode, is based on the same notes of that major scale, but played from the 3 up an octave to really it'd be the 10, but it would just basically be those same notes, but approached with that 3 being the root of that particular scale. Now, the way you actually memorize these is to learn each of those modes as a scale in its own right. And since we're talking about, the second mode, the Dorian mode, the 2 would be thought of as the root of that scale. You want to basically, with each of the modes, get it so that you recognize the fingering and you're thinking of them distinctly and separately from your fingering of the major scale. In other words, you don't want to be thinking of your Dorian mode as and relating everything to the shape of the major scale. You want to get it so that you have distinct different fingerings for each of those and you recognize the shape of those, okay? So let's go ahead and cruise through those modes, and I'll do them all in C, and you can see how the shape of them differ, how the intervals differ. And your rewind button and your pause button here are your best friends. I'm going to be covering this rather quickly, and there's a lot of information here if you haven't dealt with the modes before. So feel free to pause and rewind and as many times as you need. Be noble like the Bereans and stop and pause and go and see if what I said is true. Okay, so here we go. Let's cruise through the modes. First mode, the Ionian mode. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's your major scale, okay? Second mode, Dorian mode, is 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7 octave, okay? Third mode, Phrygian mode, is 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7 octave. Fourth mode, or Lydian mode, is 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, 7 octave. Fifth mode, Mixolydian mode, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7 octave. Sixth mode, Aeolian mode, we're almost there, is 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7 octave. That probably looks familiar. That's the same, that's really your natural minor scale, isn't it? We talked about that in Volume 1. Okay, same thing. Your seventh and final mode is the Locrian mode. And it's 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, flat 5, flat 6, flat 7 octave. Everything's flat but the 4. Again, I want to encourage you to rewind that section as many times as necessary to really assimilate what we talked about, okay? The focus today is going to actually be on how to apply those modes to the music you're playing, okay? So once you've gone and you actually know how they're put together and the intervals that make them up, and you can play them in different positions on the neck, then how does it apply to music? Well, let's go back to that hypothetical situation we were discussing earlier where you've got your song in G, okay, so here's G major, and then you come across that C major chord, or C major 7, whatever. What would be the appropriate scale to play over that C? Well, it would be the C Lydian. Do you understand how that's put together? Let's check it out. Okay, G is the key center of the song, right? It's the tonic of the song. G is where you'd play your major scale, your Ionian mode. Well, C is the 4th relative to 1, right? So the 4th interval, the scale based on the 4th interval of that key would be the Lydian mode, your 4th mode. So played in that position, in other words. So you wouldn't play G Lydian, you'd play C Lydian. So that's 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, 7, octave. Listen to that real quick. Here's G, going up to C. That harmonically outlines it fine, right? If you went and played G major, and then played a C major scale, the C Ionian, that note right there doesn't work, huh? It'd be like, that much better outlines that original harmony that was identified with that G. Okay? You hanging in there? Let's go over another example. Say in that same song, you've got your G major going, okay? Say there's an A minor 7 chord, okay? What would be the appropriate mode to play there? Well, you look, the song is in G. A would be the 2nd interval. So you'd play the 2nd mode in that position, which would be the Dorian mode. 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7 octave. Hear how that outlines the G harmony perfectly? Okay, so that's important because check it out. Say that same song had an E minor 7 chord, okay? So it's like, and I'm doing jazzy voicings here. I mean, you could also do, all right? Well, you may reason, well, okay, let's see. The A minor 7 chord that I just looked at, I played A Dorian. So I guess when I come to that E minor 7, it's a minor 7 chord, so I should just be able to do E Dorian, right? Wrong, right? It doesn't work because the function of that A minor 7 chord is different than the function of the E minor 7 chord in the key of G. It all boils down to the function of that chord within the key of the song. E is the 6th interval relative to G, which is the key of the song. You would play the 6th mode at E, which would be the Aeolian or natural minor, as opposed to the Dorian. Okay? Rewind that section and assimilate that. And what you want to do is the way that you can really get these things under your fingers and to where you can apply them to your music is to apply those staggered interval exercises that we talked about in Volume 1. You know, so say we're playing an A and you were wanting to do the A Dorian in staggered thirds. I'm not going to cover this in too much detail. Check out Volume 1 if you need to, but basically it'd be 1, flat 3, 2, 4, flat 3, 5, 4, 6, 5, flat 7, 6, 8, flat 7, 9, octave. And then bring it back down. And you can also apply that reversing of the order, ascending of versus descending of the pairing. Remember we talked about it in Volume 1 as well. So you do 1, flat 3, and then instead of doing 2, 4, it's 4, 2, flat 3, 5, and instead of 4, 6, 6, 4. So that would be all right? Rest assured, by the way, that what we're definitely not going for is you playing through a chart and thinking Mixolydian, Locrian. You don't want those terms floating around in your head. It all is a matter of going through the practice and assimilating these things so that you can, on the actual gig, be just thinking music and be thinking about God. Okay? Cool? The last concept I wanted to cover in fingerboard familiarity was interval memorization. Now, that sounds like kind of a clinical term, but it's oh so musical. And what it has to do with this, knowing your intervals is perhaps one of the best things you can do to develop your ability to play music with others, for one. You'll very, very rarely be in a situation where musicians are communicating to each other saying do, re, mi, fa, so, or whatever else, They're always talking in terms of even the titles of the chords, minor 7. It's got a flat third and it's got a flat 7, major 7 or minor 7, flat 5. I mean, the chord names themselves refer to the intervals. And the more that you can get these intervals so that they're second nature to you, it's like developing your ability to communicate and developing your language. Okay? Now, there's nothing complicated about this. This just is a matter of working on it and practicing, okay? Getting back to that C major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 octave, right? So you already, you know where some of the intervals are. And you'll have a much better idea with your intervals once you get through the previous section. But the point is this. You want to get to the point that you can look and say, okay, here's 1, here's 5, right? Based on that major scale. Look at this shape. You want to memorize the fact that this is a 1 and this is the 5th above that. And the wonderful thing about the way that this instrument is tuned is you can transpose this up and down the neck. So, anywhere you go, this is the 1, this is the 5th above, 1 5th above, 1 5th above, right? Similarly, 1, and this is a 3. No matter where you go on the bass, that's always a 1 and the 3 above, okay? I want you to memorize, I encourage you to memorize all of the intervals, okay? 1 and the 2 above, 1 and the 3 above, 1 and the 4 above, 1 and the 5, 6, 7 octave, okay? After that, memorize those same intervals in the octave below the 1, okay? So think of this as your 1. The 5th, I refer to it as the 5th below, but it's the 5th in the octave below would basically be here relative to that, okay? By the way, if you're at all unsure of how to do that, just think of this as your 8. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, okay? Here's your 5, right? So here's your 1. Here's your 5 as well, same note, okay? So memorize the shape of the 1 and the 5th below, 1 and the 4th below, 1 and the 3rd below, 1 and the 2nd in the octave below, okay? Get all those down and get it so that it's second nature. You could just, if somebody says, oh, you know what, on that one thing, can you make sure that you, do a slur between the flat 3 and the 3? You won't be thinking, okay, let's see, 1, 2, 3, so that must be my flat 3, so here's my, you don't want to do that. You just want to have it where it's like, oh, like that, okay? And that kind of alludes to what I was going to say. After that, expand it to your sharps and flats, okay? There's a limited number of possibilities here. There are basically 12 notes, and memorize them in both positions, and you'll be on your way. It's really, really valuable to do. Now, tie this all in with your ears and your listening. And what this involves, I'm not a good singer, but you don't need to be either. What you want to do, though, is be able to sing or distinctly identify the pitch of the interval you're trying to hit before you hit it. Check it out. So here's C, right? So if I was going to try to do the 4th above, nail that pitch before you play it. So it's like, duh, right? Now, it was obviously flat for you vocalists out there, but this is the pitch I was trying to hit. The point is this, though. When you can identify those notes before you actually play them, then you've really started to internalize this stuff. And your ability to improvise will skyrocket, and your ability to just kind of manage will, because what happens is, say Sunday morning comes along and your worship leader starts playing that song that the Lord just gave them. So you're kind of sitting there looking at your charts going, well, this is not a song I've ever heard before. Well, if you've got your ears together and your interval memorization together, you will be able to identify that, okay, we're in D, and oh, it sounds like he went to the fifth. And you will be able to negotiate those changes and provide appropriate accompaniment in those situations that you're really having to rely on your ears. And your abilities as a musician will just go up 3 notches. Okay? So work with those things, and I hope they help you out. Congratulations on making it through the eating your vegetables portion of the video. Let's move on to some fun stuff. I refer to certain technical things as the spice of your playing, because these techniques are sort of the musical equivalent to the function that spices have in the culinary scene, okay? Let me play a couple of examples to kind of illustrate this, okay? This is the same lick. Here's version 1. Here's version 2.